The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the enormous room. Jake Morrison walked through them slowly, his black boots clicking on the polished metal floor. Behind him, Lisa Bennett carried a small tablet and kept her eyes straight ahead. Both humans wore their best diplomatic uniforms, dark blue with silver buttons that caught the strange purple light of the alien lamps overhead. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched up so high that shadows hid the top from view. 12 different seating areas surrounded the center of the room, each one designed for a different alien species. Some seats hung from chains for flying creatures, others were filled with water. For the fish-like beings, a few glowed with heat for the rock people who needed warmth to live. Jake took his place at the small human table in the center. It felt tiny compared to the massive alien sections around him. Lisa sat beside him and opened her tablet. The screen glowed softly as she prepared to take notes. Neither human spoke. They had learned long ago that showing emotion in this place was seen as weakness. The Zephyrin Chancellor rose from his elevated platform. His blue scales caught the light as he moved, and his large yellow eyes looked down at the humans with obvious dislike. Chancellor Vex had been the leader of the council for over 30 Earth years. He was old, powerful, and had never liked humanity's rapid spread across the galaxy. "This council comes to order," Chancellor Vex announced. His voice came through translation devices that turned his hissing sounds into words the humans could understand. "We gather today to address the matter of humanity's continued violations of galactic law." Jake kept his face blank. He had expected this. For months, human ships had been exploring new systems, building colonies, and defending themselves when attacked. The Council called it illegal expansion. Humans called it survival. The hegemony representative spoke next. Her name was unpronounceable. 2 human tongues, so the diplomats simply called her Ambassador Purple. Her tentacles moved in complex patterns as she talked, which Jake had learned meant she was angry. "Humanity has established 17 new colonies in the past year," she said, her voice bubbling through her translation device. "These systems were claimed without council permission. This is forbidden under the expansion laws set down over 2,000 years ago." A clicking sound came from the insect-like being in the corner. Ambassador Six Legs, as the humans called him, represented the Traders Guild. His compound eyes reflected the light in strange ways as he spoke. "Human ships have also been seen in the neutral zone," he said. His translator made his voice sound mechanical and cold. "They carry weapons that have not been approved by council standards. This threatens the peace that has lasted for centuries." Jake listened to each accusation without moving. He had heard them all before in smaller meetings the council was building. Their case carefully, making sure every member species heard why humanity was dangerous. The Maritime Collective's representative spoke from her water-filled tank. Ambassador Finn's looked like a large shark with arms, and her voice came through speakers placed around her tank. "Most concerning is humanity's refusal to share their fusion technology," she said. "All species must contribute their discoveries to the Council database. Humanity has ignored repeated requests for this information." This made Jake's jaw tighten slightly. The fusion technology had taken human scientists decades to develop. It was the only thing that made human ships fast, enough to compete with alien vessels. Giving it away would leave Earth defenseless. Chancellor Vex stood again, his tail swishing behind him with obvious pleasure. "The evidence is clear. Humanity has grown beyond the bounds set for young species. You expand too quickly, build too many weapons, and refuse to follow the laws that keep peace in our galaxy." Jake finally stood up. He was not tall compared to most of the aliens in the room, but his presence seemed to fill the space around him. Years of military service had taught him how to command attention without raising his voice. "Chancellor," he said calmly, "humanity has never attacked first. Every weapon we carry, every ship we build, every colony we establish is for defense. We protect what is ours." "What you claim is yours," corrected the crystalline hierarchy's representative. Her voice came through harmonic tones that hurt human ears. "These systems belong to the galaxy, not to any single species." Then why do the Zephyrians control 80 systems? Jake asked. Why does the hegemony claim exclusive mining rights to entire sectors? Why do the traders decide which species can use the main shipping lanes? The chamber fell quiet. No one had expected the human to ask these questions. The established powers had controlled their territories for so long that questioning their right to them seemed impossible. Chancellor Vex's scales darkened with anger. Those territories were earned through centuries of service to galactic peace. Humanity has existed in space for less than 100 Earth years. You are children. Compared to us? Children who have never started a war, Jake replied. Children who have never enslaved another species. Children who ask for nothing except the right to exist. The right to exist without limits, Ambassador Purple snapped, her tentacles writhing. Right to ignore laws that have kept peace for millennia. Jake looked around the chamber at each alien representative. Some avoided his gaze. Others stared back with obvious hostility. A few seemed curious about what he might say next. The council has made its decision before we even arrived, he said. This is not a trial. It is a sentencing. Chancellor Vex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The vote will be fair, Ambassador Morrison. Each member will choose based on the evidence presented. But Jake could see the truth in their alien faces. The decision had been made in private meetings, in secret communications, in deals struck between species that had controlled the galaxy long before humans ever looked at the stars. This trial was just for show. The voting began. One by one, each species declared humanity guilty of violations that threatened galactic stability. The reasons varied, but the result was the same. Humanity would be contained, controlled, and made to serve the interests of older, more established powers. Only the Void Runners remained silent when called to vote. The representative, a being of pure energy contained in a special suit, simply flickered once and said nothing. The Void Runners rarely participated in council politics, and their abstentions surprised no one. Chancellor Vex stood for the final time, his yellow eyes gleaming with victory. Vote of 11 species. With one abstention, humanity is found guilty of galactic law violations. Terms of containment will now be announced. Jake Morrison remained standing as the sentence was read. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt something cold and hard settling in his chest. Lisa Bennett stopped taking notes and closed her tablet with a soft click. The time for talking was about to end. Chancellor Vex raised his clawed hand to silence the chamber. The alien representatives leaned forward in their seats, eager to hear humanity's punishment. Some of them had been planning this moment for years. Others simply wanted to see the young upstart species put in their proper place. The terms are as follows, Chancellor Vex announced, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Humanity will cease all expansion beyond a 50 light-year radius of Earth. All existing colonies outside this boundary will be abandoned within 60 standard days. Jake Morrison stood perfectly still. His hands remained at his sides. Breathing stayed slow and steady. Lisa Bennett had also stopped moving, though her fingers still rested on her closed tablet. Second, the Chancellor continued, the human military fleet will be reduced to defensive vessels only. No ship larger than a frigate class will be permitted. All weapons technology will be submitted to council inspection. Low murmur of approval rippled through the alien sections. The Maritime Collective's Ambassador Finns made a sound that her species used to show pleasure. The insect representative clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Third, all human technological advances will be shared with the council database within 30 days of development. This includes, but is not limited to, fusion technology, faster-than-light communication systems, and defensive capabilities. Jake's jaw tightened almost invisibly. That was everything. The council wanted to strip humanity of every advantage they had worked so hard to develop. It would leave Earth completely dependent on alien goodwill for protection. Fourth, human ships will no longer be permitted in the neutral zone without council escort. All trade with non-council species must be approved in advance. The restrictions kept coming. Each one was designed to make humanity smaller, weaker, more dependent. Jake could see the pattern clearly. This was not about keeping peace. This was about keeping control. Finally, Chancellor Vex said, his yellow eyes gleaming, humanity will pay an annual tribute of raw materials and agricultural products to support Council peacekeeping efforts. These payments will begin immediately and continue for a period of no less than 100 Earth years. The chamber fell silent. Even the aliens seemed surprised by this last demand. Tribute was what conquered species paid to their masters. It was what slaves gave to their owners. Ambassador Purple spoke up, her tentacles waving slowly. These terms are generous considering the violations. Humanity will remain free to govern their own worlds within the assigned boundaries. Free, Jake repeated quietly. The words seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Chancellor Vex leaned forward on his platform. The Council understands that these terms may seem harsh to a young species. However, they are necessary to maintain galactic stability. Humanity has 10 standard days to accept these conditions. And if we refuse, Jake asked, then economic sanctions will begin immediately. All trade with human systems will cease. Council members will be forbidden from purchasing human goods or selling to human colonies. The Traders Guild representative clicked his approval. Sanctions prove insufficient, military enforcement will be considered. The Council has maintained peace for over 2,000 years. We will not allow one species to threaten that peace. Looked around the chamber one more time. He saw aliens who had controlled the galaxy for centuries, who had grown comfortable in their power. They saw humanity as children who needed to be taught their place. They could not imagine that these children might have grown up while they were not watching. Ambassador Morrison, Chancellor Vex said, surely you understand the reasonableness of these terms. Your species is young and inexperienced in galactic affairs. The Council offers guidance and protection. Jake reached down and closed Lisa's tablet case with a soft snap. The sound seemed louder than it should have in the enormous chamber. Lisa stood up beside him, gathering her few papers and pens. Ambassador? Chancellor Vex repeated. Do you wish to discuss the terms? Perhaps suggest modifications? Jake picked up his own small briefcase and pushed his chair under the table. His movements were slow and deliberate. Every alien in the chamber watched him with growing confusion. Ambassador. Morrison, the hegemony representative, called out, you must respond to the Council's offer. Protocol requires an official statement from the accused party. Jake turned toward the exit doors. They were the same massive portals he had walked through an hour ago, but now they seemed like the entrance to freedom rather than a trap. There will be no response, he said clearly. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several aliens made sounds of shock in their native languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the sudden burst of communication. Chancellor Vex stood up from his throne, his tail lashing behind him. You cannot simply leave, Ambassador. That Council has made its judgment. You must accept or reject the terms. Jake stopped walking and turned back to face the assembled aliens. His gray eyes were calm but hard as stone. To accept or reject your terms would mean we recognize your authority to make them, he said. We do not. The statement was so simple that for a moment no one seemed to understand it. The idea that any species would not recognize Council authority was impossible. It had never happened in recorded galactic history. You are in violation of galactic law, Ambassador Purple sputtered. You cannot simply decide that laws do not apply to you. We never agreed to your laws, Jake replied. We never signed your treaties. We never asked to join your council. You assumed we would submit because every other species has submitted. He resumed walking toward the doors. Lisa followed close behind, her heels clicking on the floor in a steady rhythm. The sound echoed through the silent chamber. Ambassador Morrison. Chancellor Vex's voice cracked like a whip. If you leave this chamber without accepting Council authority, humanity will stand alone in the galaxy. No protection, no alliances, no support when enemies come for your worlds. Jake paused at the threshold of the great doors. He did not turn around. Chancellor, he said quietly, we have always stood alone. The only difference is that now we will stop pretending otherwise. Doors began to swing shut behind them. Chancellor Vex took a step forward, his claws scraping on the platform. You cannot survive without the Council, he shouted. No species can stand against the combined might of the galaxy. Jake's voice came through the narrowing gap in the doors, calm and certain. We are about to find out. The doors closed with a sound like thunder. In the sudden silence that followed, 12 alien species realized that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. The young species had just declared independence from the galaxy itself. The moment the great doors closed behind the humans, chaos erupted in the council chamber. 12 different alien voices began speaking at once, their various languages creating a noise that overwhelmed the translation systems. Electronic squealing, mixed with clicking sounds, bubble-like gurgling, and harmonic tones that hurt to hear. Chancellor Vex pounded his ceremonial staff against the floor repeatedly as the heavy metal rod made deep booming sounds that echoed through the chamber, but the aliens kept talking. Many of them had never seen anything like what had just happened. "Order," Chancellor Vex shouted over the noise. "I demand order in this chamber." Slowly, the alien representatives quieted down.
No.
But the tension in the room had changed completely. Before the humans left, there had been confidence and satisfaction. Now there was confusion and something that might have been fear. Ambassador Purple was the first to speak clearly. Her tentacles moved in tight, angry patterns as she talked. "This is impossible," she said. "No species has ever walked away from a council judgment. It has never happened in 3,000 years of galactic government, crystalline hierarchies." Representative spoke next. Her harmonic voice made the walls vibrate slightly. "The humans' dismissal of our authority threatens everything," she said. "If humans can ignore council law, what stops other species from doing the same? What happens to galactic order?" Several other aliens made sounds of agreement. The idea that any species could simply refuse to follow council rules was terrifying to them. Their entire system of government was based on the belief that council authority was absolute. But it was Ambassador Six Legs from the Traders Guild who said what many of them were thinking. His compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he spoke. "Did you see the human's face?" he asked. Morrison showed no surprise when we announced the terms. No shock, no anger, no fear. He was too calm. The chamber fell quiet again. Several aliens looked at each other with growing unease. "What are you suggesting?" Chancellor Vex asked, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "I am suggesting that they knew this was coming," Six Legs replied. "Their reaction was prepared. They had already decided what they would do before they entered this chamber." Ambassador Finns made a low rumbling sound from her water tank. In her species, it meant deep concern. "If they expected our judgment, why did they come at all?" she asked. "Why not simply ignore our summons?" "Because they wanted us to make this decision," said a new voice. All eyes turned to the corner where the Void Runner representative sat. The being of pure energy rarely spoke during council sessions. Most aliens found their presence unsettling, and their words were often difficult to understand. "Explain yourself," Chancellor Vex demanded. The Void Runner's energy suit flickered. As they spoke, humans needed a reason to act. They needed the council to threaten them publicly in front of all member species. Now they have that reason. A chill settled over the chamber. Void Runners were ancient, older than any other species in the galaxy. They had seen civilizations rise and fall across the stars. When they spoke of danger, wise beings listened. "How, Ambassador?" Purple asked, though she seemed afraid to hear the answer. "Unknown," the Void Runner replied. But humans do not make plans for failure. They would not walk away unless they believed they could survive what comes next. Chancellor Vex tried to regain control of the situation. He stood tall on his platform and spoke with as much authority as he could manage. "Whatever the humans think they can do, they are only one species," he said. "We represent 12 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Our combined military strength is overwhelming." "Is it?" asked the Maritime Collective's representative. "When was the last time any of us fought a real war?" "The hegemony expansion ended 400 years ago. The trade wars ended 600 years ago. Most of our ships are for patrol and ceremony, not battle." Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was true that galactic peace had made most species soft. Their militaries were small, their weapons outdated, their soldiers inexperienced. The humans, however, Six Legs continued, come from a world where war was common. They have been fighting for their entire history. Their military technology is designed by beings who understand conflict. Chancellor Vex's scales darkened with anger. Are you suggesting that we cannot enforce our own laws? I am suggesting that we may have made a serious mistake, Six Legs replied calmly. Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. The young Zephyrian's scales were pale with excitement as he approached Chancellor Vex's platform. The aide said breathlessly, urgent message from the monitoring stations. Human ships are moving throughout their territory. Large numbers of vessels all heading toward their outer colonies. The chamber fell silent. Chancellor Vex felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. What type of movements? He asked. Evacuation. Ships, sir. Transport vessels, cargo haulers, construction equipment. It appears they are ... leaving. Leaving where?
Us.
Everywhere, sir. Every human colony outside their home system is being evacuated. They are pulling back all their people and equipment. Ambassador Purple's tentacles went rigid with shock. They're abandoning their colonies, but that makes no sense. Those worlds represent decades of work and massive investments. The void. Runner's suit flickered brighter, lest the colonies were never meant to be permanent. The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. If the human colonies had been temporary, if they had always planned to abandon them when threatened, then what had been their real purpose? Chancellor Vex turned to his aide with growing dread. How long would it take them to complete these evacuations? At current pace, sir, less than a week? They seem to have been preparing for this for some time. The chamber erupted in voices. Again, but this time the tone was different. The confidence was gone, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The humans had not reacted as expected. They had not begged or bargained or submitted. Instead, they'd simply ... left and taken everything with them. As the aliens argued and worried, in the chamber's decorative elements, the device had been recording everything, transmitting every word back to human intelligence networks miles away. In a secure facility, Lisa Bennett reviewed the transmission with her colleagues. She smiled as she listened to the growing panic in the alien voices. Phase 1 complete, she reported into her communicator. The council is confused and worried. The voice that responded carried the calm authority of Earth's military command. Excellent work, Agent Bennett. How long before they realized the scope of the situation? Lisa looked at the tactical displays showing human ships moving throughout the galaxy. Hidden, waiting, preparing for exactly this moment. Based on their reaction, I estimate 3 to 5 days before they understand what we have really been doing out here, she said. More than enough time. Begin Phase 2. The communication ended, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts. The Council thought they had been judging humanity. They had no idea that humanity had been judging them instead, and the verdict was already in. Captain Rex Hamilton stared at the empty space where a human colony should have been. His ship, the Council enforcement vessel Thunder's Wake, hung in orbit around a planet that had housed 50,000 humans just days ago. Now there was nothing but bare rock and scattered metal. Scan the surface again, Rex ordered his crew. The captain was a veteran officer from the Maritime Collective, with years of experience in peacekeeping operations. He had never seen anything like this.
Still,
no life signs, Captain, reported his sensor officer. The colony site shows evidence of recent habitation, but all structures have been removed or destroyed. Very thoroughly destroyed. Rex moved to the main view screen and studied the planet below. He could see the outline where buildings had once stood. Roads were still visible, carved into the rocky ground. But everything else was gone. Not abandoned in panic, not left behind in haste, but carefully and completely removed. Any response to our communications? He asked. Negative, sir. We have been broadcasting the Council's demands for 6 hours. No human vessels in the system. No hidden bases detected, no reply to any of our messages.
Rex felt a growing unease in his chest. This was supposed to be a simple operation.
Right. Deliver the Council's ultimatum, accept the human surrender, and begin enforcement of the new restrictions.
Instead, he was talking to empty space. His communications officer spoke up from across the bridge. "Captain, we are receiving similar reports from other enforcement teams. Fleet Captain Morris reports the same situation at Kepler 4 for 2B. Captain, Steele found the same thing at Ross 128. All human colonies appear to have been evacuated." "All of them?" Rex asked. "Every single one, sir. 18 colonies, 3 major shipyards, dozens of research stations and mining operations, all evacuated, all equipment removed." Rex stared at the tactical display showing the positions of Council. Enforcement fleets throughout what had been human space. Dozens of ships, hundreds of crew members, all finding the same thing. Nothing. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, detecting an artificial object on the planet's surface. "It appears to be some kind of marker or beacon. Put it on screen." The view screen changed to show a simple metal pole standing alone in what had once been the colony's central square. A small device at the top of the pole was flashing a steady blue light. "Can we read what it says?" "Yes, sir. It is broadcasting a message in standard galactic trade language." The message appeared on the main screen in simple text. "By order of Earth Command, this system has been returned to neutral status. Any attempt to claim or occupy will be met with appropriate response. This message will repeat." Rex read the words twice, trying to understand their meaning. Turned to neutral. Status. What did that mean? And what kind of appropriate response? "Captain," his communications officer said urgently, "priority message from Council Command. All enforcement teams are to report their findings immediately." Rex activated his command communicator and connected to the emergency council session. That was already in progress. Chancellor Vex's image appeared on the screen, his blue scales darker than usual with stress. "Captain Hamilton," the Chancellor said without greeting, "report your status." "The human colony at Wolf 359 has been completely evacuated, Chancellor. No human presence detected anywhere in the system. All infrastructure has been removed or destroyed." "This matches reports from all other teams," Chancellor Vex replied grimly. "It appears that humanity has abandoned all territory outside their home system." Rex could hear other voices in the background of the transmission. The council was in emergency session, trying to understand what had happened. Chancellor Rex said carefully, "If I may ask, how is this possible?" Our intelligence suggested. "These colonies were heavily populated and economically important to humanity. The evacuation effort alone would require hundreds of ships and perfect coordination. That is what we are trying to determine, Captain. Return to Council space immediately. All enforcement operations are suspended until further notice." The transmission ended, leaving Rex alone with his confused crew. He looked around the bridge at officers from 3 different species, all wearing the same expression of bewilderment. "Set course for home," he ordered. "Best possible speed." As his ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Rex did not notice the small probe that had been watching from the edge of the system. The probe recorded the departure of the Council ship and transmitted its data to a hidden receiver, light years away. Admiral Knox Peters received the transmission aboard his concealed command ship. The old human officer had spent the last 3 days watching Council fleets discover empty system after empty system. His weathered face showed grim satisfaction as he reviewed the latest reports. "They still do not understand," he said to his aide, Commander Julie Stone. "They think we retreated because we were afraid." "How long before they realize the truth?" Lee asked. Knox studied the tactical display showing Council ship movements. The alien fleets were scattered across dozens of systems, their formations broken, their commanders confused. "Soon," he said, "when they try to resume normal operations, they will discover what we have really been doing out here." Knox activated his secure communicator and connected to Earth Command. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Sarah Cooper, the highest-ranking military officer in human space. "Report Admiral Peters," she said. "Phase 1, complete as planned," Knox replied. "All human personnel and equipment have been evacuated from target systems. Council enforcement fleets have discovered the empty colonies and are withdrawing in confusion. Casualties? None. The evacuation proceeded exactly as rehearsed. Every human citizen is safely away from potential conflict zones. Admiral Cooper nodded with satisfaction, and Council response. Confused and scattered, their fleets are spread thin across empty systems. They have no idea that this was all planned years in advance. Excellent. Begin Phase 2 on schedule. Show them what those empty systems were really for. The communication ended, and Knox turned back to his displays. He could see Council ships jumping to hyperspace throughout the galaxy, racing back to, waiting for exactly this moment. Ships that had been secretly positioned throughout Council territory over the past several years. Ships that were now beginning to power up their systems and prepare for Phase 2. The Council thought they had won when humanity walked away from their ultimatum. They thought the humans had retreated in fear, abandoning their colonies to avoid conflict. They were about to learn the difference between retreat and repositioning. Knox smiled as he watched the tactical display update with new information. Council trade routes were already beginning to experience problems. Communication networks were reporting strange delays. Key infrastructure was starting to show signs of system failures. All according to plan. Signal all units, Knox ordered. Begin Phase 2. Let them know we are here. Throughout the galaxy, hidden human ships began to decloak near critical Council installations. Not attacking, not destroying, just watching and waiting. The Council was about to discover that humanity had not abandoned the galaxy at all. They had simply moved to better positions. 2 weeks after the human exodus, Chancellor Vex sat in his private office, staring at reports that made no sense. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries were experiencing delays. Communication networks across 3 sectors were running slow. Energy distribution stations were reporting minor but persistent problems. Each problem by itself was small. Together they painted a picture that terrified him. His aide entered the office carrying another stack of reports. Young Zephorians. Scales were pale with exhaustion from working around the clock. The communication relay at Wolf 359 went offline an hour ago, and the energy distribution center at Alpha Centauri is operating at reduced capacity. Chancellor Vex studied the locations on his star map. A cold realization began to form in his mind. All of these locations, he said slowly. They are near former human colonies. Yes, sir. And there is something else. Our long-range sensors are detecting unknown ships near several of these facilities. The ships appear when problems start, but they do not respond to communication attempts. Before Chancellor Vex could respond, every communication device in his office began broadcasting the same signal. Emergency alerts flashed across his screens as a transmission reached every council facility simultaneously. The image that appeared showed a human woman in a military uniform standing on what looked like the bridge of a massive warship. Behind her, screens displayed tactical information showing positions throughout council space. I am Admiral Susan Clark of Earth Command, the woman said calmly. This message is being sent to all council facilities and member governments. Vex felt his blood turn cold. The scope of what he was seeing was impossible. To broadcast to every council facility at once would require access to the main communication network. No outside species had that access. 2 weeks ago, Admiral Clark continued, the Galactic Council declared humanity a threat to galactic stability, demanded that we submit to your authority or face the consequences. We have decided to show you what a real threat looks like. Tactical displays behind her, updated, showing red markers appearing throughout council space. Hundreds of them, positioned near every major installation, trade route, and communication hub in the galaxy. The ships you see are not attacking your facilities, Admiral Clark explained. They are simply making their presence known. Each vessel has been in position for an average of 8 months. Ah, you never detected them because you never looked for them. Chancellor Vex staggered backward into his chair. 8 months! The humans had been planning this for 8 months, placing ships throughout Council territory while pretending to be concerned about colony expansion. Every critical system in Council space is now under observation by human forces, the Admiral continued. For every council ship that enters former human territory, one of your critical systems will go offline. It's not destroyed, simply shut down until you withdraw. The message paused, and Chancellor Vex could see other council leaders appearing. On split screens, all receiving the same transmission. Their faces showed the same shock and fear that he felt. You taught us that control does not require conquest. It only requires the ability to disrupt what others need to survive. Chancellor. Vex activated his emergency communicator and tried to contact his military commanders. Half of the communication channels were already experiencing problems, not just near the obvious targets, but near facilities the Council had thought were secret, research stations, military bases, to manufacturing centers that were supposed to be hidden from outside observation. How long had the humans been watching? How much did they know? Your response is predictable, Admiral Clark continued, as if reading his thoughts. You will attempt to use military force to remove our ships. You will discover that we have positioned our vessels very carefully. Tactical displays appeared, showing human ships positioned near hospitals. We do not want to harm innocent beings, Admiral Clark said. But we will defend ourselves if attacked. The choice is yours. Chancellor Vex watched in horror as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The human ships were not just hidden near obvious military targets, they were everywhere, near trade hubs that fed billions of beings, near power stations that provided energy to entire worlds, near communication centers that connected families across the stars. The humans had not just declared independence, they had taken the entire galactic infrastructure hostage. The terms are simple, Admiral Clark announced. Complete recognition of human sovereignty over our chosen territory. Establishment of neutral zones for voluntary trade between our peoples. Acknowledgement that Earth's children bow to no crown, elected or otherwise. Chancellor Vex tried to comprehend the scope of what had happened. While the Council had been focused on humanity's obvious colonies and military buildup, as humans had been secretly placing assets throughout the galaxy. Every expansion, every trade mission, every diplomatic contact had been cover for us intelligence. Operation that dwarfed anything in galactic history. The transmission showed one final tactical display. Every major council facility was marked, along with the human ships watching them. The message was unmistakable. Humanity could shut down galactic civilization whenever they chose. This communication will end in 60 seconds, Admiral Clark announced. After that, we will wait for your response. Choose wisely. Chancellor Vex looked around his office at the reports. The flashing emergency alerts, the tactical displays showing human ships throughout Council space. In 30 years of leadership, he had never faced anything like this. The humans had not. Just refused to submit to Council authority. It demonstrated that Council authority was an illusion. The galaxy's most powerful government existed only because one young species had been polite enough to pretend it mattered. 50 seconds, Admiral Clark said. Chancellor Vex reached for his communicator to contact the other Council leaders. Whatever response they gave would determine whether galactic civilization continued to function or collapsed into chaos. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Council was not making demands. They were about to start begging. 40 seconds. Old order was ending. A new one was about to begin. And humanity would write its own terms. 30 seconds. Chancellor Vex began composing the most difficult message of his career. Had learned every lesson the galaxy had to teach about power, patience, and the art of war. 20 seconds. The communication ended, leaving the galaxy in silence. But in that silence, everyone could hear the same thing. The sound of everything. Changing, humanity had spoken. Now it was time for the galaxy to listen.